10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 249. Hey everybody, welcome back to episode 249 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. As always, we hope you're doing okay, staying safe and healthy out there. We've got part 3 of our Modulation series, and I'm really excited about this one. This one we're going to look at a little bit more of an exotic modulation. That's not as common as the other two that we've studied, but does happen quite a bit in jazz standards, and this will be an important one for you to know and be able to handle. As always, before we get into the show, a little bit of housekeeping. Just to let you know, you can get a PDF for this episode detailing everything we talk about, as well as PDFs and audio from every single other episode that we've ever done. And you could do that by becoming a patron of the show. That means that you support us directly with a very small monthly donation, and you get all that stuff in return. So in order to do that, go over to 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon banners, and get yourself signed up today, and you get instant access to all of that stuff. I have got a ton of new patrons to thank this week. So let me start by thanking our brand new $5 patrons this week. Thank you to Cam, Sherry, Philippe, Bill, and Adam. Thank you guys so much for signing up. We've got some new $3 patrons. Thank you to Gene, Jack, Steve, and Arimas. Arimas, I hope I'm saying that right. I apologize if I'm not. And I want to thank John for editing their pledge from $3 to $5 in order to get those extra benefits. So go and check out Patreon. Go and check out what you get in return for your small monthly donation. And you really are what keeps this show going. We are a listener-funded show. So thanks again. 10minutejazzlesson.com. Click on one of the Patreon banners. You can't miss them. All right, so let's jump into today's episode. So we have talked about two of the most common jazz modulation tactics in the past two episodes. One of them was modulating from the key of the 1 to the key of the 4. The other one was modulating from the key of the 1 down to its relative minor. And you're going to see those in hundreds of different tunes. This week, we're going to turn to a little bit of a trickier modulation, both to hear and to play over. And it also happens a little bit less than these other modulations. But we're going to talk about some really prominent jazz standards that actually use this particular key change so that once you're practicing it, you can immediately go and apply it to one of these tunes that we're talking about this week. So what we're going to do is we are going to modulate from the key of the 1. So again, let's talk in the key of B flat concert. So if we're in the key of B flat, we're actually going to modulate to the key up a major third from B flat. So in this case, we're going to go up to the key of D. So we're looking to get from this key, B flat, up to the key of D, which is a really interesting sound. It's a very bright modulation. That key of D is somewhat unexpected. That key up a major third is not something you're going to hear every day. Let's check that out again. So B flat, up to D. So it's, as I said, it's a little bit more exotic sounding, a little bit more surprising. So how are we going to get there? Well, we're going to get there in the way that we typically tonicize new keys. We're going to play a 2-5-1. So again, if we're in the key of B flat, going to the key of D, we're going to play B flat major 7. Then we're going to go to the 2 in D, which is going to be E minor 7, to the 5 of D, which is going to be A7, and then finally we're going to land right on that D major chord. So let's check out what they all sound like together. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it sounds a little bit less exotic when you actually prepare it by playing the 2-5-1, but it's still a really interesting modulation. And that's why I saved it for the third episode. Now we can kind of get into the weeds a little bit with a less common modulation, because we've talked about the two most common modulations. Okay, so let's think about what we are going to concentrate on here as far as the notes that we are going to trace through this modulation. So we're going to start with the root over the B flat major chord. Then what's going to happen is when we go to that concert E minor chord, we're going to go up a half step and play a B natural, which becomes the fifth of the 2 chord. Then when we get to the 5 chord, which is A7, we're going to go up a whole step to the C sharp over the A7 chord. And then when you land on that D major, you can pretty much choose any chord tone to land on. We're not going to trace that C sharp up to D or anything like that. We're going to go ahead and give you free rein on what you want to do after you've traced that C sharp. So again, it is the root of the 1 chord. Then you're going to go up to the 5th on the 2 of the key that we're going to. Then you're going to go up to the 3rd on the 5 of the key we're going to. And then you're going to choose whatever you want to on that D major 7 chord. Okay, so what you're going to notice is on the PDF, I've got those notes color-coded so that you can follow and trace how I'm actually using them. So when you write your own lines, you want them to trace that same motion as you go through. And those notes are going to be key to telling your listener, hey, there is this modulation coming and I am prepared for it. I know what to play. And it's just going to give your playing again through this odd modulation a sense of continuity and a sense of smoothness as it goes through here. What so many musicians do that haven't studied these modulations is that they'll stop their phrase and start over again whenever they see something coming that looks out of the ordinary. We don't want to be those players. We want to be able to start a phrase and keep playing that phrase even when the key changes so that our playing doesn't become predictable. We don't stop every time there's a modulation and our listener can instantly hear that. Okay, so let's dive into the first line that I've prepared for you. If you've got the PDF, really listen for those notes tracing up. So it's going to be a concert B flat, going up to a concert B, going up to a concert C sharp, and then I just chose to resolve to the D major chord in the way that I thought sounded best. And I think you should do the same. You don't have to pick a note over that new 1 chord. Okay, so here's line number 1. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4. And one thing I want to mention on that first one is that I use the same idea over the first measure as I did on the second measure, but I just changed the notes to fit that new 2 chord, to fit the new chord. So that provides for a really nice sense of continuity, and that's what I want you to pay attention to on that particular line. All right, let's listen to the second line. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so hopefully you heard the continuity in that line as well, and hopefully I achieved what I was looking for, a nice, smooth transition through that modulation. All right, we've got one more for you this week. I decided to do 3 examples instead of 2 because I feel like all of the examples we can get out of this more tricky modulation, that's going to help you when you go to write your own. So here is the third line. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. One, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, on that one, I was trying to do a little bit more rhythmic variety than the other two lines. The other two lines were basically straight eighth notes. This one, I tried to throw in a little bit of syncopation and show you that you can still be creative even while trying to create this nice, smooth line that goes from key to key. All right, so there's your 3 examples, and your homework is to write 2 of your own examples, very similar to what we did in the last 2 episodes. Now let's talk about where you can find this particular modulation in a couple of really important and often played jazz standards. So the first instance that we see this particular modulation is in Cole Porter's tune, I Love You. So if you were to go down to measure 12, you're going to see the tune moving from the key of F major to the key of A major by way of this exact modulation. So look for that tune. I know this is a tune that people really, really love to play. There's a lot of great records with this tune on it. So that would be a perfect place for you to start practicing this particular modulation in the context of a real chord progression. The second tune is the great ballad Polka Dots and Moonbeams. And actually, if you play this tune in F, which most people do, it's the exact same modulation in the exact same key. This time it happens in the second A section moving into the bridge. Right before we move into the bridge, you're going to see we go from the key of F major to the key of A. And then the bridge hangs out in that key of A major before coming back to the key of F. To go into the last A section. Okay, and the third tune is a much more advanced composition. It is Lazy Bird by John Coltrane. And if you are to look at measure 5 in Lazy Bird, you're going to notice that we go to the key of E flat by way of a 2-5-1. And then in the measure after that, we are going to go to the key of G by the way of a 2-5-1. So there's an E flat to G relationship, which gets us that major third. That also happens in the bridge. I want you to go into the bridge and try to find that. Now, I'd also love to hear if you can recall any tunes off the top of your head that do this on top of the 3. And if you want to share some of those tunes in the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Facebook group, that would be awesome. So just drop those in there if any of those come to mind. And really make sure that you take your time on this modulation. Again, this is a really difficult one to hear. So make sure you can hear it first. Sit down at the piano, play some of the chords, do the modulation, try to trace those notes through that modulation, maybe even sing those notes that we talked about over the chord progression, things like that. But really make sure that you are comprehending the sound of this before you try to do any work on it and write your lines and stuff like that. Make sure you get your hands on the PDF. Again, you can go over to 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon links, and sign up at either $3 or $5 a month for some different rewards over there. Thank you to everybody that signed up. You guys are amazing. You really make this show possible, and it's just so cool to see how many people find this stuff useful. So I can't thank you enough for supporting the show. All right, we will talk to you guys next week with a brand new episode. If you have any questions, get in touch with me in the Facebook group or email me at 10minutejazzlesson@gmail.com. I really hope you are all staying safe and healthy out there, and we will talk to you soon. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.